Hello, my name is Cody the koala bear. This is Cody. He's my mascot. And if you go through the Epic React material, you'll be talking with Cody a lot. Some of you already have gone through some of the material, which is cool and exciting. And yeah, Cody the koala bear kind of helps you know what to do for every exercise and stuff. So Cody the koala bear is fun. I'm super excited to be live streaming with you. Please do take opportunity, if you haven't already, to jump on the Discord, because this is where I'm going to be posting a bunch of links. And yes, hopefully OBS works a little bit better today. That's Cody with a K. I know that's not obvious, but Cody Koala K, Kent K, that's why Cody has a K. Yeah, Marty the money bag next. That comes after the launch. Yeah, oh, I just realized I'm not sharing my screen. Let me share that with you. So this is what I've been looking at. So yeah, join the Discord. Right now there's a link in the description. I think kcd.im/discord will get you in here. And you'll get your very own welcome channel where you'll talk to the bot and make sure that you're on board to obey the code of conduct. That's why our community is so nice and awesome, because everybody has to obey the code of conduct. It's awesome. So yeah, it's going to be a good time. We're going to be talking about shallow rendering and why you should never do it. And I'd love to answer people's questions about how to write tests. So what's interesting is when I wrote this blog post, why I never use shallow rendering, this was actually a pretty controversial opinion. And now I think it's quite a bit less controversial because the React testing library is so much more popular now, and there are a lot of people who haven't even tried Enzyme before, and so don't know about shallow rendering. And so if that's you, then that's great, because you don't have to worry about this. But for the rest of us, if you've used shallow rendering in the past, then maybe you'll be able to relate to some of this. And if you are still not completely buying the value of doing a full render, then hopefully you can ask some questions as we get through this, and yeah, we can kind of maybe convince you that shallow rendering is a terrible idea. So without any further ado, basically yesterday, or here, let me actually quickly talk about the live stream. So today, right now, we're talking about shallow rendering, and then in the future upcoming live streams, we got a bunch upcoming. Might even have more than this. It kind of depends on how things go with the launch and stuff. But yeah, so definitely get these on your calendar, smash the bell and whatever else, so that you get notified about the upcoming live streams. It's going to be a good time. And then there was one other thing that I wanted to mention, and that is on my YouTube channel, I just uploaded a video. Where's my uploads? Oh, come on now. I just uploaded it a little bit ago. Yeah, joining and creating KCD learning clubs. Oh, that is, and create. This is actually not the one that I uploaded just recently. What happened to that thing? Yeah, there it is. Yeah, it just looks like all the other ones. So I just did this one this morning, showing you how to create a KCD learning club for Epic React Dev. And I strongly advise that you take the time to watch this and do this, because it is a good idea. So take a look at that. Here, actually, let me grab a link to that really quick for you, and I'll stick that in here. Get those learning clubs going, because you will learn way more if you go through the material with the learning club. And we actually do have registration that is open right now. So if this time works out for you, for going through this material and stuff and talking with people about it, then sign up for this one. If it doesn't, then make your own. The nice thing about making your own is you can make it fit exactly to your schedule. So that's nice. Okay, cool. Ready to talk? Let's talk about why I never use shallow rendering. So the big reason, and I'm pretty much going to go through this blog post, so we'll kind of go through it together, and I'll be right here in the Discord answering questions and stuff. So feel free to ask questions as we go. Yeah, so shallow rendering, it's this feature in Enzyme, also in React Test Renderer, where it allows you to basically only call the the component, the function component that you're passing to it, and it will give you back all of the React elements. And that's as far as it goes, is just basically into a function call. So here's a little example that I made. This was before hooks or anything, but same thing applies whether you're doing shallow or whether you're doing class components or function components. It's all the same. So here we have a hidden message component, and it's rendering a div, a button, a fade component, and then a div inside of there. And if you use shallow rendering, this is how you're going to write that sort of a test. You import shallow from enzyme, you say shallow, you pass the component that you want to write a test for. And then here, what we're doing in the test is we're saying wrapper.find fade. We're going to grab the props, and we'll just verify that they are what they should be. So here, fade has 2 props, in and the children prop. And so we just are making sure that those props are correct. And then we're simulating a click event on this button. And then we verify that the fade props were updated properly. Okay, so it's like a reasonable unit test for the most part. Yep, OBS just is not going to do it. I uninstalled OBS and reinstalled it. I don't know. I'm going to have to, I probably will switch to Zoom in the future, which is a total bummer, but I need it to be stable. So that's I'm super bummed out about this. What a tragedy. Oh man, why? I've got like, it's so annoying. Okay. So anyway, if we were to use the wrapper debug utility that we get back from shallow, so we call wrapper.debug and we console log that, then we're going to get basically what you see in the render function. Okay, so that's what it gives you, and that actually is it's not showing CSS transition, which is what fade is rendering right here, because it doesn't actually call into fade. So what it's doing actually is it's just calling the function, and that function is going to return this object that has like the type of element and its children, and it'll go on all the way to get those React elements that you're going to create from this component, but then it doesn't go any deeper than that. And this is touted as like a feature. This is like kind of why people like shallow rendering, is because it means that they can test things in isolation from their children. But there's a really serious problem with this. Somebody's trying to call me. No, I'm not. I'm not going to answer that Discord call. Yeah, so there's a really serious problem with this approach, and that is it breaks on refactors. So like fundamentally, the thing that I have against shallow rendering is I can refactor my components implementation in my test break, and I can also break my application and my tests say everything's still working. So that's actually like testing implementation details. That's basically what shallow rendering is all about. It's just like this whole bucket of, here, let me allow you to test implementation details. And that's why I'm super against it, because here the fact that our type for this component is a fade function, that is an implementation detail. Who cares what that is? I could refactor this component to make it not a fade component, or I could maybe refactor this button and make that a separate component that I just forward props along to. That's also an implementation detail. User doesn't care about it. Not only just the end user, but also the users of my component, they don't care about it either. And so it's all just implementation detail stuff. So let's talk a little bit about why people use shallow rendering. So I tweeted about this and got a couple of responses, or a lot of responses, and I kind of summed them up with 3 main responses. So the first is people want to use shallow rendering for calling methods on React components. So here we're going to render the hidden message, and we're going to make sure that the state show is true, and then I'm going to call the toggle function. So here, if we come back up, we call toggle to update this state. And then from there, we have to call this wrapper update thing so that we call the render function, or we update the rendered output. It's a nightmare. It's ridiculous, but it is what you have to do. And then we verify that the state show value is false now. So this would be a great reason to use shallow rendering, except it's a really bad test. So you shouldn't do this type of test anyway, because this will fail if you refactor your component to no longer have toggle or to rename the show property, which are just details of your implementation. And then it could also you could actually break your implementation and your test will say everything's fine. For example, what if I were to accidentally say, instead of this.toggle, this is like I leave out one of those G's or something. That test would still pass without any trouble, but my component is like totally busted in a bad way. I just realized I forgot to share this blog post in the Discord chat, so I'm going to post that in there just to, so people can follow along if you want to. Okay, cool. So yeah, so this is a great reason to use shallow rendering, but it's a bad thing to do. So there's one. Here's another. It seems like a waste. The general feeling here is with shallow rendering, it only renders the component that you care about. It doesn't render the additional components. And so it seems like a waste. Yes, it might take a few extra milliseconds to run the children components. But that, like, who cares? Like, I'm much more interested in being confident that stuff is going to work. And I'm not at all worried about like my the speed of I am worried about the speed of my components, like how fast that the speed of my tests, how fast they run. But if it's deciding between being confident that my my application is going to continue to work versus running really, really fast, I will definitely prefer being confident that my application is going to work. So I don't really care about it seems like a waste. It doesn't really make a difference to me. So yeah. And then, like, on top of that, if we're talking about, like, well, every single time I make a change, I run all of my tests and it takes like multiple seconds versus just 2 or 3 seconds. Well, you probably should be using Jess watch flag, and so it only runs the tests that are relevant for the files that you've changed, which should like dramatically reduce the number of tests that you're running anyway. Okay, cool. So another one is for actual unit testing. So this is a really common misconception. Like you have to use shallow rendering if you want to unit test. That is not true. You can use just mocking to mock out the components that you don't want to actually use. So like that works just fine. Now I would also question the value of the distinction of unit testing versus integration testing or component test or whatever you want to call it. I don't actually care about that. I'm more interested in getting confidence, and so whether it's a unit test or an integration test that does that, it doesn't make a difference to me. And so what really matters to me is how difficult is it for me to write the test and maintain it in the long term, and also how valuable is it for me to get that test working, or how valuable is that test passing or failing to me. So if I end up with a test that is breaking, like I'm having to babysit all the time, that's like totally a useless test. And that's what shallow rendering gives you, especially if you shallow render and snapshot. Then, like, we're not talking about snapshots. I suppose if somebody asks a question, then we could. But yeah, if you're shallow rendering and then snapshotting your shallow render thing, then like be prepared to change to update that snapshot literally every time you change anything. So like those two in combination is like soul crushing. So you want to avoid that for sure. But yeah, so I'm way more interested in my test giving me confidence than I am in it running fast or being actual unit testing. If there is like a bit of code in here that I want to test and I want it to be totally in isolation, I can do that with just.mock. I don't typically do that. I just render the whole thing. Like, why is this such a problem? And I can understand and relate to people struggling with, well, hey, there's this child component that makes this HTTP request. So I don't want that request to go out. I don't want to have to mock that request out in every single test that renders that component. But yeah, you don't need to worry about that, because when you have your API calls mocked out properly, then it shouldn't really make a difference. You just mock it out in one place, and then it doesn't matter what components are being rendered. They're all going to be able to hit that same mock. And sometimes it'll matter to you and you can make some assertions on it, and other times it won't, and you just let the mock be handled. And what I'm talking about specifically is this stop mocking fetch blog post, where I explain how to properly mock HTTP calls using MSW, which is just amazing. It's awesome. So once you have that set up, then like who cares what side effects are being shot off by your the children components. And in fact, you really do want those things to happen, because if you're not using that component properly in the component that you're testing, then you'd want some failures to indicate. And here we are again. You get a lot more confidence by just rendering the whole thing, and it is totally worth it. So I strongly advise the actual unit testing argument to me is silly, because you actually can unit test without shallow rendering, and like that distinction doesn't really matter all that much. Okay, cool. So without shallow rendering, let's talk about that really quick. I'm a huge believer in the guiding principle because I created it. The more your tests resemble the way your software is used, the more confidence they can give you. So that's why React Testing Library was created. That's the whole reason that React Testing Library exists, is for that reason. So when I created React Testing Library, there were a handful of things that I very intentionally did not allow to happen. So shallow rendering is right there. Static rendering, which is Enzyme's render function. What this does is it's like renders the components as if you're rendering on the server. So we intentionally don't support that. There is a way to render like you're hydrating, because there are things that you want to try with that. But anyway, that's what you want. One thing that I intentionally didn't want to support, because it doesn't make sense to test something like that specifically. You get all of the confidence that you need by rendering it to the DOM, so you're fine. And then pretty much most of Enzyme's methods, query methods like find, so many problems with a lot of Enzyme's methods, which is why React Testing Library doesn't support those. Like all of this stuff is just like implementation detail stuff. We don't want any of that stuff. And it's very intentional that React Testing Library doesn't support these things. Getting the components props or getting the component state, both of those things are absolutely implementation details. Neither the user nor the end user nor the developer who's using the component knows or cares about these things. They're all implementation details. So pretty much everything that users of your component cannot do, your test shouldn't do them either. So this is how, if you wanted to take this hidden message component that we had up here, and you wanted to do a true unit test of this component, of the whole thing all together, then this is how you might approach that as a true unit test. So you would have a mock of React transition group, and your mock, you want your mocks to be high fidelity, which means that they attempt to do very similar things to what the actual component that they're mocking is going to do, or the module that it's mocking is going to do. So here we're using CSS, or we're returning an object that has CSS transition, so we can pull that out of React transition group. And that's going to be a function component. We're going to make that a jest function. Here's our implementation. If children, or we grab the children, we grab the in prop. We just alias that to show because in is a keyword. And then if show, then we'll render the children. Otherwise, we'll render null. So this is basically what CSS transition, the functional capabilities of CSS transition is. But we're just skipping the CSS transition part. And then from here, this needs to be updated. if anybody wants to, feel free. But now we're using screen. We don't accept anything back from render anymore because screen's better. But yeah, so we render the hidden message, and then we get the toggle button. We can make an assertion on the props if we want to. So we can assert that CSS transition was called within, as well as the default props. That's going to be children, timeout, and have the proper class name. So in is true here. And we also, function components are called with context. So yeah, this is where, like, for me, if I were doing this today, I would not mock React transition group for this test, just to be clear. But if you want to, you have to do these extra couple of things to make sure that your component is the thing that you're mocking is being used properly. That's why it's just so much extra work to start mocking stuff. But in any case, now we're going to just verify that hello world shows up, and then we'll clear the CSS transition mock so that we can make another assertion on its call. We'll fire a click event on the toggle button, and then we'll verify that the message is now hidden and that our CSS transition component is being rendered properly. So if you wanted to isolate your components, it is totally possible. You don't have to use shallow rendering for unit tests. But yeah, I wouldn't do it. And in particular, React Transition Group actually has capability to disable your the time on your transitions. And so you don't need to do that anyway. You just configure it to say, hey, don't like all the transitions just take 0 milliseconds, and then your test can just go without worried about transitions. So anyway, yeah, and I have this video that you can check out called Migrating from Shallow Rendering React Components to Explicit Component Mocks. So if you're still like, how does this work? How does that even make sense? You can go to this video, and I'll just paste that here for convenience, and watch that process there. And shallow wrapper is good to test small independent component with proper serializer. It allows to have clear, understandable snapshots. So yeah, just to push again on the snapshot argument, I don't really use snapshot testing, and like a snapshot of a shallow rendered component will basically be this. This is what a snapshot would look like. And so if we gave that function a name, then that function's name would be here as well. Like all of this stuff is going to be in here. So if we change the fade component, which is a local component, we don't even export it. So if we refactor this to change the fade component to something else, or if we added a special component to wrap the button, or if we change the prop, or like anything about this, our snapshot's going to bust. It's totally useless. So I don't recommend this. Yeah, snapshots basically useless with shallow rendering. Actually, I'd say they're almost worse than useless because you end up babysitting your test a lot. So anyway, that's all that I wanted to share about shallow rendering. It's a bad idea. Don't do it. It's if you are just like jumping into React testing library, this is why you can't do it. If somebody asks you, hey, why don't you shallow render that thing? You can point them to this blog post and this video. Yeah, I'm totally open to answer any questions. This one might be a little bit shorter than our previous, but yeah, does anybody have any questions about testing or shallow rendering or anything else? And while I'm waiting for those questions, I'll just, yeah, I don't know. I kind of already said all the things I wanted to say. If you missed the article from yesterday, then go take a look at that. It's a good one. Oh yeah, I mentioned, well, no, I already mentioned that too. So it's good stuff. Okay, here we go. Ernesto, how would you go about testing with React Query? So I'll show you. In the Bookshelf app, which is part of the Epic React course material, you can go to the tests and then book screen. And this is all, like, this is an integration test. I'm rendering the entire application, the whole app, and we're just navigating to the page for the book. And so that means we're using all of the stuff. Like, we're not mocking anything except for the HTTP request using MSW. Outside of that, we're not mocking any modules or anything like that. There's one, and I'll explain how that one works in the course. It's the profiler. I don't want to deal with the profiler stuff. So, but outside of all that, it's all just regular components, which means that we're using use query and all of that stuff in here. And that all just happens thanks to MSW, the way MSW is set up in here. And I show you how to do that in the course. So look forward to that. So basically the effective solution to shallow rendering is the React testing library. So using the term solution, basically the solution is don't use shallow rendering. And then the solution to how do I test React components is use React testing library. So that's what I would, yeah, that's that. How much content from testing JavaScript will be in the new Epic React Dev course? So 0 content is copied. Like there's no same videos or anything like that. It's all unique content on Epic React. Sorry. This is so annoying. I'm so sorry. Yeah, so Epic React Dev or testing JavaScript has tons more testing content than Epic React Dev does, but Epic React Dev has a lot of content. So yeah, they're both valuable. If you want to really deep dive and understand testing, testing JavaScript is still the best place to do that. If you want to learn all of React and everything, Epic React is the place to do that. So, okay, great. So is Epic React going to require a learning club? No, it does not. There's no requirement on a learning club. But it is recommended. I think you'll learn more if you have a learning club to learn with. Will Epic React be like a testing JavaScript where we can buy access and consume the content on our own time? Yes, that is exactly what it is. You can consume the content in your own space, at your own pace, in your own time. You can do it with a friend. You can do it without a friend. However you want to consume it. It's a self-paced workshop. So there's no live attendance required. Do I prefer application-wide integration tests instead of end-to-end tests? No, not instead of, in addition to. So here's a blog post about how I think about these different types of tests with integration tests versus end-to-end versus unit versus static testing. So yeah, give that a read. That's I kind of think of end-to-end tests as like a whole user flow. This is my happy path sort of thing. AAA, yay or nay? I don't know what this is talking about or what that means. So you'll need to be a little more clear. Sorry. Would you just use fire event? Oh, sorry, you're having another conversation. How advanced would the course be? Super. So this is the thing. Like a lot of people are struggling to wrap their head around how big Epic React is. So let me try to crystallize it for you. You come in with zero knowledge in React, period. And you come out like total expert of React, can build anything with React. That's how big it is. It is enormous. You've never seen a course this big, period. So yeah, it is very advanced. Also 0 to 100 to 110% Epic React developer. Yeah, it's just huge. So it is perfect for people who've never done React before. It's also perfect for people who have many years of experience with React. Yeah, 0 to hero, 0 to epic. It's huge. Will Redux be included in Epic React, or will you go over why Redux's new hooks make Redux null? So Redux's new hooks are great. If you are using Redux, that's awesome. I do not cover Redux because the use cases for Redux are very minimal. I don't recommend Redux. I show you how to use React State for managing UI state and React Query for managing your React cache. So that is the world that we live in today, and it's awesome. Okay. What exactly are you not going to test? That's a great question. So I've got so many blog posts about this. So just a couple of things. What to test, how to know what to test is a great blog post for that. Also, should I write a test or fix a bug? Another great blog post relevant to this. And implementation details. testing implementation details, another good one. So yeah, how to know what, the way that you know what to test is you think about, okay, what's really important that my users can do that I really don't want to have break. Everything is different. The interesting thing about code coverage is that every single line is equal to every other line in your application with that code coverage number. And so like, sure, maybe you have 80% code coverage, but the last 20% is your checkout flow. That's not good. Don't do that. So like that coverage number is only sort of useful. I only use the coverage report for queuing me in on, oh yeah, I forgot about that use case. Like that's why this code exists. I forgot to test that use case. And that's what you should be, yeah, I do need to write a book. That's what you should be focusing on is how do I, or what are the use cases I want to make sure don't break. And then like, whether you fix a bug or write a test, it's all relative to what's the most important thing. Do you need to have a new feature, or do you need to make sure that the existing features don't break, and you just prioritize it? It's just like writing any other software. It's no different. So great question. Hopefully those blog posts are helpful. Okay. How do you feel about setting code coverage goals? My company has 80% code coverage goal, and I feel we've reached a point where we're just writing tests to write tests, and a lot of them are bad. Yes, this is very common. I don't like code coverage goals, especially like high code coverage goals. I don't think that they're entirely useful. I'm more interested in use case coverage, but the problem with that is it's very difficult to get a measurable metric for use case coverage. So the other problem is that, like I said, every line of code coverage is equal to another line. So if you have 80%, but you don't have that last 20%, which is really important, then maybe that's not great. Not every line of code coverage is equal. And there's actually one thing that I teach in testingjavascript.com is how to configure your testing tool, like the coverage metrics, so that it has like a special coverage for files that match a particular glob. So you're like, this area of the app, this is the checkout flow. We really want to have like 90% coverage, maybe 98% coverage on this. And then this, like the rest of the app can have pretty low coverage. We don't really care about that. So it like, you can fine tune it that way, and maybe that could be something that you do. You're like, well, this part is really important, this part not so important. And that's something I teach you how to do in testingjavascript.com. Oh, there is an early access channel. You're not supposed to see that. So cat's out of the bag, or something's out of the bag. Spilled the beans. And yes, there is an early access channel. I do have people that I gave early access to give me feedback, and Epic React will be that much better because of that early feedback. I'm sorry if you're not a member of that early access channel. I handpicked them. So, okay, how many people do you expect to get a raise based on completing this course? Everybody! Yeah, that's the plan. Okay. React's new hooks making... Oh, yeah. Okay, that makes more sense, Kevin. So I would say that the thing that made Redux null for me, Redux was not useful for me years ago. I used it in one project, and it wasn't long before I realized that it was not the state solution for me, because I was opening like 1 million files. There were so many problems with it. And so, yeah, I've been using like regular React state, composition, and even context. I used React Broadcast back in the day, which was kind of the precursor to the context API, and it worked great. So yeah, I mean, the new hooks API makes context more palatable, but like composition has always been a better solution than context anyway. And now that we have React Query, it's just so good. There's not really a lot left over for your application to manage in a global setting. So anyway, yes, we do have purchase power parity. you will need to choose which discount you want. So in the first 24 hours of the launch, there will be an enormous discount. And then like we'll have a kind of a stair-step discount over the rest of the sale. But the discounts don't stack. So you can look at your purchase power parity discount versus the huge launch discount and decide which one you like better there. When is the book coming out? Yeah, eventually maybe. I actually thought a few weeks ago about writing a book and having it as like a bonus thing for Epic React. But that was a few weeks ago and I decided I didn't have time to do that. But yeah, I basically could just publish my blog as a book. I don't. And we're back. Sorry about that. Okay, so have I read this article? Yeah, I believe it was actually in response to mine. Mine was initially published to Medium, and I thought that this was like in response to mine, but I can't remember. But yeah, I believe I read this. This was yeah, a while ago. Yeah, here it is, Kent's article. I'm not gonna go through it and pick apart each point right now, but I remember going through it and I wasn't convinced. I still think it's a terrible idea. Especially now with React Testing Library, you shouldn't be using Enzyme anyway. So just use React Testing Library and you can't use shallow rendering. So it's a moot point at this point. Okay, you said that now you would not prefer mocking. What would you do instead? So yeah, React Transition Group, I was told, I haven't looked at it, but I was told that React Transition Group has a way to disable transitions. And yeah, disable. Yeah, so you can, that's probably not it. Let's see, testing. Yeah, global transition switch. Yeah, complicate the test. Here we go. So it looks like this is where this was added. And it looks like docs should be updated with info. Yeah, here we go. So you import React Transition Group, you grab config, and you just say config disabled is true. So that's what I would do if I were using React Transition Group. And so the only reason that I wanted to mock the React Transition Group in the first place is because I don't want my tests to have to wait a certain amount of time after like I hide the message and now it goes away. Now I have to wait for it to actually finish and remove the element from the page. And so because there's a way to just disable it globally for testing purposes, that's what I would do instead. Thoughts on Playwright? Seems cool. I'm a huge fan of Jest and Cypress for my tests, so I haven't really looked into Playwright or Puppeteer. One of the big issues with Playwright and Puppeteer is that they don't have the developer experience of actually opening your tests up in the browser, being able to look back and see what the entire DOM structure looks like at every step of my test. If you haven't used Cypress, then you maybe don't know what I'm talking about. But if you have, then you know why Playwright and Puppeteer just don't match up. So thoughts on other front-end frameworks? They're great. If you like them, then I'm glad you like them. I don't have too many thoughts about other None of the existing front-end frameworks are differentiated enough from React to encourage me to move from React. React is so good, and I have so many reasons that I love React, and I blogged about it just the other day. So you can read why I love React, and nothing is differentiated enough from React to encourage me to hop off of the React train. So. Yeah, I'm going to be doing some OBS testing today to try and figure out why it keeps crashing. Because I really want to use OBS. It works great when it doesn't crash. So I just need to figure out why it's crashing. Okay. Have you used Next or thinking about it? I have long ago in the past. Glamorous Rocks is a Next app. It is actually statically generated. And it's pretty cool. It's pretty fast, you know. So I like that. But yeah, it's been a very long time since I used Next, and lots of things have changed. I'm actually really looking forward to Remix Run because I think they have a better data loading mechanism. Integration with the router I think is better. There's some accessibility things that I think are improved. So take a look at this. Like Remix is amazing. I can't wait for it. It's coming soon, I think. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. I'm gonna wrap us up, and then we can look forward to tomorrow. So let's take a look at Epic React live streams. Just to talk about what's happening tomorrow. We're gonna do an AMA about React and Epic React tomorrow. It's gonna be a good time, so don't miss that. Yeah, let's see, anything else? I think that's pretty much it. Look forward to things, and thanks for hanging out. Sorry that OBS was such a problem. Yeah, sorry about that. This is my kids love this thing, and I do too. It's awesome. Cody can't leave the office. That's the rule. But when they come in the office, then they can snuggle with him a little bit. He's great. Okay, thanks everybody. We'll see you all in the future, and yeah, hopefully I can fix this OBS thing once and for all so we never have this problem again. But we'll see. Okay, peace out.